welcome Stream Live Tampa, special edition. This is Jim Delaney. Um, first of all, we want to thank everybody for all their support through this past summer, now into the fall, as schools have opened back up, the different events that we've gone to, the showcases for baseball, and I know we have one coming up here in another week. The first thing we want to talk about and announce is a huge announcement that we're excited for, is that Stream Live Tampa is now an official affiliate of the NFHS network. We've been working long and hard with them since March and April, when the lockdown happened for everybody around our country. And here locally, we just took it upon ourselves how are we going to get a part of NFHS. So all of the athletic directors in the local area will be hearing from us, whether through some coaches at your schools, but something officially via email. I know we blasted it out on social media this week. So what it means is there are NFHS cameras in gymnasiums around the area, and mostly the football stadiums, but with basketball season coming up, we will be able to do games and stream games, which the people that we know in our local area were extremely excited about. So, and speaking for my partner Javier Nunez and myself, we're really pumped about being a part of NFHS officially, and Stefan Lawler up in Atlanta has been an integral part of that to allow us to be a part of that network, and they've already asked us to be a part of certain games, and we're just trying to figure out our schedule with that. So, but today we have a very special guest. Erica Suter is down here from Baltimore, Maryland. Erica is a youth performance coach, former soccer player at Johns Hopkins University. And how we got connected, just because Erica's a social media rock star and legend, talking about movement and nutrition and exercise, and she specializes in female athletes, but really both genders and all ages and demographics and stuff. So we want to thank and welcome Erica and thank her for coming here. So tell a little bit more on your background, Erica, so everybody that's watching this knows exactly who you are and what you talk about.
Yeah, well, I appreciate the nice introduction. Not sure if I'm a legend, but
Absolutely.
yeah, I've been a performance coach for 9 years, and I've mainly worked with young female athletes, so the elementary, middle school, and high school girl. Mainly soccer, but I've worked with lacrosse as well as softball athletes. And it's just, it's been a fast 9 years. I started off doing mainly skills training, so just ball work, shooting, passing, 1v1s, and then I realized I was part of the early specialization problem, and I was finding a lot of girls were just burning out or suffering overuse injuries that shouldn't be happening at a young age. So then I shifted from skills training into performance coaching, which is working on movement quality, stability, mobility. Strength training is really, really big in my program, but also speed, technique, from a performance as well as injury reduction standpoint. So that's what I'm up to now, and I'm doing it in person in Baltimore, but also remotely as well.
Good. I know you were talking about not just focusing on the skills training, but the overall performance training. Does that kind of lead into, you always hear the old adage with coaching is you coach the athlete before the ball player, whatever sport it is. I know, speaking from softball and baseball experience, we always try to do that, make them better athletes first instead of just focusing on grounders, fly balls, things like that, and obviously with arm care in those two sports. Is that kind of the same notion that you switch from skills training to performance?
Yeah, I mean, it's huge, and what I've found is when we build the human first and work on fundamental movement skills, so things like balancing, being coordinated, those are all things that just support the sport-specific skills. So if we're looking at soccer as an example, being able to shoot involves balance, or being able to stabilize the core, and then having the strength to follow through on your shot and use your hip flexor muscles and your hamstrings and your glutes to have a powerful shot. So all of the work that's done on the back end in the gym is only going to boost the skill side. And a lot of people do it backwards, and they're like, okay, well, we got to do skills first, and they do it over and over again without having that foundation of strength. And that's when the overuse tends to happen.
Sure. And then that's when the injuries start happening.
Unfortunately, yes. And I've seen it so many times. I mean, you hear about it from so many coaches, and it's real. I've seen stress fractures in 12-year-old girls, and it's stuff like that should be happening to like an 80-year-old, you know?
Right.
So that's why I was like, wait, I need to figure out a solution to this and really give these kids what they need so that they're playing the game for a long time. And
Sure.
most of these kids want to play in college, and that's like a 10-15 year career. So want to make sure that they last the whole time and they're resilient to injury.
Yeah. And you can't tell, we're at a local public park here in Rico, and this is where a lot of that stuff can happen as kids. Go
Yeah.
outside and play.
Mhm.
There's a playground right over here, jumping on stuff, how to land, all of those just basic fundamental movement techniques that kids just learn. You don't even think about it, that you have to go get trained on.
Mhm.
That just happens from playing outside. And then that kind of leads us into with what's been going on the last 9. It's been kind of a strange year, obviously, for all of us. With COVID concerns, and lockdowns, and places opening back up, and things, and the schools opening back up here in Florida, out right here locally in Hillsborough County and around Florida. I know I've noticed it being in teaching. Most kids are excited to be back at school, with sports opening back up, with following guidelines and stuff like that. But before that, while people were at home, you talk about movement and things like that, things that people could have been doing from the beginning while in quarantine or just in a lockdown situation. You see a lot more people riding bikes, walking at the beginning. Is that something that people need to focus on all the time, obviously? I mean, it seems common sense to me, but
Yes.
that's why I was talking to you and like, hey, come on, I think our audience needs to understand that. So I'll kind of let you, professionally speaking, talk about that.
Yeah, well, it's interesting because even before this all happened, before year 2020 and all the lockdowns occurred,
Yeah.
My coaching philosophy has always been build the human first, build a healthy athlete. So one who moves every day, nourishes their body, is sleeping well, is connecting, has a lot of activities going on, and I've always believed in this. And then when lockdown happened, it just reaffirmed what I believe in and,
Sure.
and why it's so good for us. And it was interesting in March. I remember like the news and all of our politicians were suggesting, hey, okay, stay at home, kids can't go to school, sports are shut down. And I remember I just had a weird feeling in my stomach. I was like, this doesn't feel right. Like, these suggestions all seem like anti-health. And I know you said like a lot of people like bought bikes and were still moving, but the majority of the population wasn't. It was a lot of like people who have already been doing health and fitness before.
Right.
But everyone else was just plopping on a couch and just staying inside. And I know a lot of kids were suffering with their social lives, and anxiety was at an all-time high. I've worked with some young athletes and their anxiety is just through the roof. And just being able to have that human connection and be with their friends, I mean, for the mental health standpoint, it's everything. So
Sure.
I didn't have a good feeling about this. And the more it went on, I just started to think long term, like what are going to be the consequences for kids from all of this?
Sure.
Especially if the message isn't pushed by the news or politicians as far as health. And I haven't heard one peep in the news about, hey, vitamin D in sunlight is good for your immune system. The research is all there.
Sure.
It's existed for years. That science, the preventative science of all this, there hasn't been a peep in the news until now about how to nourish your body.
Sure.
and stay healthy going into the winter months, especially up north. So yeah, it just doesn't feel right to me.
No, I understand. And that's how we connected, and that's how we communicated through social media and
Yeah.
and texting about different topics and what we should do, and coming from either a father or coach standpoint. And then about with Stream Life Tampa and about what we're doing, being around high school athletes primarily and at games and stuff. And you see, obviously, in public, you know, the option to wear masks. Some places it's mandated. And you touched on the topic of the opposite end of that of promoting fitness and healthy lifestyle hasn't been pushed, so to speak, to prevent any type of illnesses and your immune system and things like that, and how to boost that. You know, with the masks and everything, what can you touch on that? Because obviously you and I are not wearing one right now. We're within 6 feet of each other. We'll have them, in certain places where you have them, but I know it's a topic that can be controversial and things like that, but just depending on the state. You're in Maryland, a lot different than here in Florida. So kind of, if you can, touch on the risks of wearing masks and not, and how that it's affecting society.
Yeah, sure. So, yeah, a lot of people would be like, "Oh, well, you're not a doctor. Like, follow the science, follow the science." I hear it all the time, but there's many truths to science, and a lot of my mentors who are sports scientists always tell me, "Hey, a good scientist continues to dig for truth. They continue to ask questions, and they don't just take everything as truth." So when the whole mask thing came out, I was like, okay, well, I guess that makes sense as far as like coughing or maybe sneezing on someone. But then I started to talk to nurses who are actually in it, Hopkins Hospital nurses, and they said, well, the velocity of a sneeze gets through the mask. So I was like, that's interesting. And I just started to research both sides. And I think the problem now is people are just like taking one side, and they're not looking at like all of the science out there. They're just like glued to the TV, and they're like, this is what we're doing. It's like a religion at this point. But with anything, especially with masks, there's risk involved. There's studies out there on N95 mask usage with pregnant nurses, and they studied this population because it was a special population, and they wanted to see if it limited their oxygen to their infant. And I don't know what the reduction was in getting oxygen through their nose or to their brain and the rest of their body, but it was significant. I think it was like a 20-30% reduction, and this study came out in like 2016. So I was like, that's interesting. And then there's other studies that say it doesn't prevent the spread of viruses. It helps with bacteria, which is very different. So I found that interesting as well. But the pregnant nurse study really drew my attention because I work with kids in a facility, and the requirement is they need to wear a mask. But knowing what I know about getting oxygen to the brain and being able to keep a parasympathetic state in the nervous system, I don't want them restricting their oxygen intake during an intense workout. Right. So, I think with all of this, there needs to be a look at all sides, and the people need to be given a choice, or at least be given all these different scientific studies and not the ones that are being pushed by the media.
Sure. Yeah, and you end with the media, which
I've never trusted the media. Like, even when I was like 20 years old, I just never trusted it.
The mainstream media, yeah. There's a couple dear friends and supporters of Stream Life Tampa. They're within local media, but it's more community-oriented type topics. So, like, with mainstream media, and you hear about it all the time, or you see it, with the mask, and it's now become almost normal, so to speak.
That's scary.
For kids. That's even scarier. That's where I start looking around going, they're not seeing facial expressions, they're not seeing smiles.
And they're growing up in a world to fear other humans, which is extremely backwards to how our ancestors evolved. I mean, humans, for as long as they've walked the earth, they've thrived off of connecting and building communities and socializing. So that's why I'm concerned. I'm more concerned about the younger generations because they have a lot of years to live, and I don't think they're a part of the discussion in this. And I totally get, like, we have to protect the elderly and of course, but we also need to look at younger generations. And not once have I heard anything on the world kids are growing up in.
Correct. And I mentioned fashion statement. Sometimes the masks become part of your attire, of what you're wearing, and I get that. And we all have different looking masks and stuff.
It's
I get it.
interesting.
Sometimes it's part of fundraisers of what we're doing in society, whether it's with schools and stuff. I understand that, but talking specifically with kids in public, walking around
And breathing, interacting with the
Now,
microbiome.
obviously, we're here on an afternoon on a Thursday. Where kids are in school, where they should be.
Yeah.
You don't see them here right now, just the time of day. But when they're at a playground, masks shouldn't really be on. They're outside playing, breathing in.
This is we're in nature. You're like this. You should be breathing the air. And I mean, I question, like, if I can't even breathe my own air, do people really have my best interest in mind?
Correct.
Like, intuitively, it doesn't feel well. So.
Yes. And same with light, and being outside. I know you put something on this week of sunlight is greater than blue light.
Yeah.
Blue light being, technology, your phones. We're all on them every day. Every single one of us are. And at times we probably shouldn't be at night, and it's tough to fall asleep.
And that's huge too, is the lack of sleep.
That's what I was going to touch on. I know you're big on rest and sleep. Simple stuff that we all kind of take for granted. But sleep and nutrition.
Stress is big.
Correct.
Yeah. And that's one thing I try to communicate with people, because there's a lot of talk, you hear about healthy people getting sick. And first of all, we're humans. We get sick. Like, I'm a big germ right now. You're a big germ.
Sure.
We have bacteria and, like, lethal viruses inside of us right now. So sickness is a part of life. And yes, healthy people are going to get sick, but also we have to ask, are they truly healthy? And nowadays it's not enough. It's not enough to just be a gym goer and to eat healthy most of the time. That's not enough, because most people are overstressed and underslept. And those two are big factors in how your immune system functions and how much inflammation is in your body. And even just like with the blue light that you mentioned, if we're on our phones as much as we are, I think the average is like 6 hours a day of screen time.
Sure.
Your body's constantly in stress, like fight or flight mode.
Yeah.
So the majority of us aren't as healthy as we think.
No, it's interesting you said that. It's not just going to the gym, not just exercising in a park. It's not just nutrition and all that. It is the rest, the proper sleep, and how to de-stress. We all have certain forms or levels of stress, obviously.
Yeah.
So, as far as team sports going back, I know we're in different parts of the country, and you watch it when you're watching football games. Some, depending on states and their political views and things like that, some stadiums have 20% capacity, some have none. But as far as local sports or high school sports, how should those be approached? I know here in Hillsborough County, and especially on the east side of Hillsborough County, you see all the proper guidelines being taken. If somebody is tested positive or was around somebody at school, they're taken immediately out there in quarantine. I get that, but team sports, how important are kids playing sports, regardless of ability level? Again, we're talking about the younger kids, when they get introduced to it, or when they get into the intermediate, 3rd, 4th, 5th grade, into middle school. You had touched on something briefly about that this week on social media. So, what's your take on that?
Yeah, I mean, just from a physical standpoint, just being able to get that movement and be active, but I'm more focused on the mental health side of it, and just being able to see their friends, be in new environments, be competitive. And I just can't understand why youth sports would be the first thing taken away during this time. And in some states it has been. And again, it just really comes back to asking questions like, does any of this make sense? And like, why are liquor stores open, or Starbucks is open and it's packed shoulder to shoulder in there, yet you're not letting children be outside playing sports? So it's just yeah, it's really interesting to observe, and I think sports should be the first thing to open back up. And I've known so many girls who just after lockdown they couldn't wait to play again. They just couldn't wait to travel and go to games
Right.
and be in that environment. And yeah, I definitely saw the toll that it took on some of them.
It's similar with schools.
Yeah,
You
yeah.
know, that's a
school.
big, it's a big one way or the other type of argument out there is schools should open up. Kids need to be back in schools. No, you can't do that because kids will get sick or adults will get sick. And again, different schools, teachers, coaches, I know they're following guidelines that they have to follow now. But just about every kid I know is going to be back in school. Yeah, they might have to
Yeah.
wear masks.
Yeah.
Because that's what they have to do.
Well, it
That's
just
what they're told,
sounds
but-
like all of this, like, it's just such a reactive approach. If the focus had been for the past 8 months, hey, everyone move 30 extra minutes a day, get sunlight, and nourish your body, we wouldn't be in this position.
Correct.
Like, we would be fully open again. And a lot of people argue, oh, well, the U.S. reaction was awful. Like, it's not even a partisan issue. This is just common sense. Take care of your immune system. It's not a conspiracy. It's helped us for all these years.
Exactly.
So, yeah, if that had been the focus, and there's studies out there. Paul Saladino, he's a holistic doctor, and he presented a study that even just 30 extra minutes of movement a day reduces inflammation in the body and helps the immune system. And that's such an easy fix, and it's also free. You don't need health insurance.
Correct.
You don't need to pay for like a drug or anything that might have side effects. It's just like, go outside, and that should have been the message all along, because we would be more empowered by now. We'd be healthier. Kids would be back in school, and they would be playing sports, and we wouldn't be arguing.
Correct. Correct. And then no, it's funny.
It's
we sit there and
crazy.
giggle about it because it's just like, I don't know why were you not outside, doing it in the first place? Because a lot of us did it when we were kids, and more adults were outside and stuff. But with the advancement of technology and stuff. But again, you're right. The last 8 months, it's been the total opposite.
Yes. Really
be
reactive.
Be afraid. Do this. Stay right
Yeah.
there.
And
instead
fear
of-
doesn't help your immunity either.
No.
And they're really
Or your
pushing the
mental
fear
health.
right now.
Yeah. Or anything. So, this has been fantastic. I know we talk offline before you got down here, and then earlier today before we started this show and stuff. But you've said stuff today that we haven't even talked about. It
Yeah.
was just kind of, I knew you'd be a great person to talk about this topic, because you do talk about it on your social media platforms and Instagram and YouTube and your podcast that you have. You want to talk a little bit about your podcast?
Sure. Well,
What-
I still don't know what I'm doing, but
They're good.
Hey, thank you. Yeah, I started a couple months ago, and it's called the Soccer Queens Podcast,
Okay.
and it's focused on just messages for the young female athlete. So there's a lot of talk about performance training and things that they can do to become stronger or improve their speed, but there's also a lot on just the holistic approach to performance and health, and just being less stressed, getting enough sleep. I did an episode on meditation, and just making sure these kids are growing up not just good athletes, but they're just healthy individuals. Yeah.
I think, Javier, I giggle for a second, but you're absolutely right. I giggle because there's a dog barking in the background, and Javier just jumped up because he could hear it with his headphones. Dog's outside. He's happy.
Yeah,
Right?
exactly.
Okay.
We need to pay attention to animals.
That's right. That's right. Always happy.
Yeah.
But yeah, so we do want to thank, we haven't had a show in a little bit, and we want to thank two of our longtime sponsors. Lucas AC Services from day one has been a big supporter of Stream Live Tampa, and our good buddy Andrew Burdick. We'll get him back on the mic here at some point during basketball season probably. We had a good time last year. He owns AB Sports Performance down in the Ruskin area, down in the South Shore area. But Erica, it's been a blast.
Thank you.
Appreciate you, being down here, and we could kind of put this show together in a little bit. Any final comments you want to say to everybody that watches this or will watch it, and what they can do to say going from here forward? Okay, maybe to now, she's right. Erica's right. I was listening to this, but what can I do now?
Yeah, I mean, do the things where you feel the most empowered, and those things like movement, taking care of what you're putting into your body, those are going to set you up for a long quality life, so that you can do the things you want to do, whether that's play sports, or when you're older be able to walk down your driveway without falling over yourself, whatever it may be. Just take care of yourself and put your body in the best position possible to handle anything. So the focus now is on COVID, but there's going to be a deadlier virus coming down the road. So how are you preparing for that?
Correct. And that's good. Those are, good takeaways for everybody that's watching. Again, my name's Jim Delaney, Stream Life Tampa. We want to thank Erica Suter, youth performance coach. Knows a lot of stuff, a lot of information. It was very valuable info today for everybody, and we'll see you next time on Stream Live Tampa.